everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this evening? Happy and blessed Monday, blessed Pentecost Monday, as we are indeed in the season of Pentecost, with Pentecost Sunday being yesterday. We have the octave of Pentecost, right? The 8 days inclusive of Pentecost Sunday itself, where we are continuing on with the commemorations, the celebrations of the birthday of the church, the appearance of the Holy Ghost under the appearance of tongues of fire over the apostles, the inspiration, the gifts, the fruits of the Spirit, all that good stuff. So that all continues on. So a blessed Pentecost tied to everyone who is watching. And welcome to episode 557 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast, where tonight we're going to talk a little bit about a new film called Ballerina from the world of John Wick, a film that honestly, and this might be surprising to some, features probably too much John Wick in the actual plot of the movie. Too much to the point where it, in many ways, does away with and even ruins some of the timelines and connections of the previous films of the John Wick franchise, but also comes across as just a desperate attempt to try to have enough footage of Keanu Reeves' John Wick so that you can then put that into your marketing materials and try to have that be your selling point. Well, we're going to talk about the facts of the movie. We're going to talk also about the facts of how it is doing at the box office. And let me just say, first off, that the box office is not looking good for this movie at all, especially after a $90 million budget. But also, there's a lot of false information being put out about this movie, too. I can't tell you how many comments I've gotten. And honestly, it's from people who, if I had to bet, haven't actually seen the movie. So I love when people are making comments on movies that they have not actually seen relative to the actual plot. Like, it's one thing to say, okay, the marketing for this has been terrible, the marketing has been this or that, but to try to argue that the film is something or is not something when you haven't seen it is a bit too far. But the big, of course, argument that some people are putting out there is that, oh, well, people are just tired of the girl boss. They're just tired of this and that. Having seen the film, I can confirm, and we'll talk more in details about it, she's not a girl boss. She is not a girl boss almost in any way. And in fact, they make it very clear in the actual dialogue of the movie how not a girl boss movie the film actually ends up being. And so we'll talk about that and a plethora of other things. I finally have been catching up with this amazing show called Mobland. We've talked about it a bit on FNT. I had seen the first episode, maybe the first and a half episode, and I liked it, but I didn't have any time when the show first came out to really sit down. Today I was able to watch the second half of the second episode, and now I think I'm in episode 7 of this very small episode. Like, I think it's only between 8 and 10 episodes total. And man, oh man, do they know how to get you hooked at the end of every single episode. It was a show very much made for binging. It would have worked, I think, also in that weekly release title. Whichever way it got released, it would have worked because of the way that the show's transitional moments, right, towards the end of one episode, the beginning of the other, were so good, right? It has that ability to hook you on. So shout out to Gary Nerdrotic, who I know has been really singing the praises of that film quite a bit. But yeah, fantastic series is Mobland, as far as its writing and as far as its cast and everything else. And so we'll talk a little bit about that also, but we, of course, can't do any of that until we jump into the chat. But before we do, make sure, of course, if you're watching, smash that like button. Light up also that fire button on Odyssey and smash the rumble button as well. And again, tell us where you are coming from today and how y'all are feeling. We got, of course, myself in the chat, Gary Banjo Sandwich Worthington. What's going on, Gary Banjo Sandwich? Saying early, I said it would flop, referring to Ballerina, but I love the kick-ass action and the flame-on bit. I think that there are some really awesome action sequences within it, but unfortunately, there is also a whole plot trying to go on with the movie, too. We can't ignore that. Snortapoopus Cuber at 636 said, hello, humans and other quitters. What's going on, Snortapoopus? He then just says, hello to me. JS Pena hanging out in the chat as well, saying, ahoy to you. JS Pena then adding on, saying, I saw Ballerina over the weekend. It wasn't bad, but it could have been better. And I think that's exactly where I would stand on it, too. There was so much potential. There were so many things that they could have done, and honestly, I think they let themselves get a little bit too caught up in trying to have too much John Wick, trying to almost be too true to the world. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they should have changed the lore or changed the dynamics of the world in which they live in. But it's one thing if you're going to tell a brand new story, new character, new background, and are then going to take chances on that because there's different ways you can tell that story than with what we got, which was instead all of those typical tropes that you see in almost every John Wick movie that you love to see when it's John Wick, you love to see when it's Keanu Reeves because he's built up to that. He's really earned that, right? So to the point where, yeah, this is something you do every single movie, but you know what? Because it's you and because of what you've done up to this point, you've earned that. It doesn't really work the same way with a brand new character that you are trying to introduce and basically, in many ways, be like a John Wick Jr. Now, as I said, I think that they do have at least enough distinction between those two characters to not make her be any type of replacement character, but there is a lot to be desired in the story. That's the biggest flaw that it has, and story is very important for any movie. Keely Chow also saying, hello, how are you, Thor, Freya, Baby Sif doing? Everyone is doing swimmingly. Thank you for asking. We got Jimmy A, who is a member. What's going on, Jimmy A? Saying, hail in chat, hail to you. Always glad to see you here. We got Jeremy Zakowski tagging, say, evening, Odin, everyone on here. Good evening to you. Super Anime Gamer, hey, what's up, my dude? How's life been? Dude, where you been? That's the real question. It's been going pretty well. Summertime has been hitting it off. This is like the first full week I have where I have somewhat of a free day. I still had to do some stuff. I had to get on the roof of my house at one point to clear out one of the gutters because it had just been, since probably last summer that I had cleaned it out. And luckily it was a very easy fix, but it's something that probably long-term need to do a bit more with and more upkeep with. But other than that, yeah, did that. Had to fix the flag on the outside of my house. It had flown off during this last storm. We lost power. That's a fun thing that happened to us. So on Saturday here in the Tennessee area, we got some really bad thunderstorms with some pretty big gusts. It was enough to, tear down a lot of trees and a lot of tree branches. We also lost power. So the kids ended up having a lot of fun because we got the flashlight, the lanterns, things like that out. They had a lot of fun with that. And so that lasted, however, from around 4:45 p.m., so in the afternoon on Saturday, all the way up until maybe 10:30, 11 a.m. the next day. So that was a bit tough, especially in the morning, when it comes to cooking the meals and things like that. Luckily, we had enough things. We were able to get an ice chest and to buy some new milk and stuff. But we had to throw everything in our fridge away because that had all gone bad because we didn't expect it to be out that long. That's the longest it's really ever been out in our area. We've been very lucky with that. But there's more storms coming in. Shouldn't be too bad with the current crop of storms, as I've not seen any major cells, at least in the radar that I've seen. But yeah, that happened this weekend, and so that was an interesting experience. But I like it. I have fun with those things. It's almost like camping. Kincaid and Rumsky, has the John Wick franchise jumped the shark? I wouldn't necessarily say it's jumped the shark. I just think that it was not a well thought out project. I think that there was a lot of things that they could have done. I think there was a lot of things that they could have been able to improve the story by focusing maybe a bit more about her. I think this would have been a great film to spend more time focusing on the family that she's a part of. We know some things about them from their, John Wick, of course, being from their family. This, kind of like Russian ballerina theater, like arts type family. There's a lot of stuff. Angelica Houston plays a great matriarch there. But there's a lot still we don't know. And I think that this is where they could have really dove further into that. And instead, we had a new family introduced, and they're not really a family because they're instead called and considered to be a cult. And you understand why later. But it gets a bit odd. They could have done much more. I think they kind of did them dirty by not having a more fully fleshed out plot that really can't stand on its own, right? Without John Wick, this film cannot stand. And I think that's a problem. Thanatos Felicitas, Hail, what's going on to you, Hail? We got Forever Sci-Fi hanging out also, as always. Thank you again, Forever Sci-Fi, for being here. If I repeat your name, I apologize. We got Trump Tuber, Hail. Hail to you at 7:30. Thanatos Felicitas, hello to you. Hello, Thanatos at 7:30. Luke Zilla saying hello to you. Hello. Kagan Rumsky has a John Wick franchise. Okay, I got that. So I'm glad I went back and didn't miss over those. Bruce waving in the chat with the fun, funky pink hands. Luke Zilla also said hello. What's going on? Let me see if I am caught up here. I believe so. So let me minimize, maximize. Jimmy A, there he is. He's a member, and he says here, I guess even though Ballerina is not a girl boss movie, people see a female protagonist and assume it will be like Star Wars, Ghostbusters, Furiosa. And Jimmy A, that is the real point. And that's the reason why I wanted to have a, hey, fact and fiction when it comes to both box office and when it comes to the actual story of the movie as well. Because the perception and the lie being perpetuated, and I would argue mostly by people that have not actually seen the movie, is that the perception is that there is a girl boss component. The perception is, well, we've been done dirty so many times, why should we give them another chance? I think that if you're coming at it from that lens, that's very much legitimate, right? The mindset of, I'm not going to give them a chance because of what has been given previously and because typically our, expectations are subverted. The reason why this is different, though, is because having seen the movie myself, I can confirm to you that it is not your typical girl boss type movie. She is not just good from the very beginning. She is not even the best. I guess we'll be getting to some spoilers here when it comes to the story. Nothing too crazy, but obviously, if you've seen the trailers, you know that there are interactions that occur between her and John Wick, right? That's something that's laid out in the trailer, so that's not really surprising or really spoiling much of anything. But at one point in the movie, there's a fight that happens between them. And what's very clear is that John Wick owns her. In fact, John Wick is toying with her because he recognizes, look, you don't have a chance against me. It's like almost like that, I'm the Baba Yaga. Who do you think you are here, right? And I think that moment was actually really important because it is a perfect example and perfect proof to show you she is not the girl boss. The fact that John Wick is able to destroy her essentially and play around with her, right? Not even really harm her because he's just able to kind of knock her around a bit. That to me is pretty much all that you should need to see or even need to hear to know and to confirm, oh, okay, this isn't what maybe some of the trailers seem to be or what some people might be trying to spin and perpetuate online. Just because there are a couple of moments in the movie that give some concern. So, for instance, very early on, and this was something that I actually loved as an overall scene, she's sparring with a male partner, and she keeps getting destroyed. She keeps getting flipped around, thrown around, etc. And the trainer that she has, she comes up to Ana de Armas's character and tells her, hey, you're going to lose every single time if you try to fight like them because he's always going to be bigger than you. He's always going to outsize you. He's always going to overpower you. You instead have to fight your own way. You actually have to do things like cheat, use his own momentum against him, etc. All things that are very practical, right? You actually can have an equalizer between men and women in fighting. However, cheating is involved. Bringing weapons into the discussion can sometimes make those things also become a bit more fair as well. So I liked that even the trainer, even the female trainer who was going through this with her, had to be brutally honest. And it's sad that we live in a world today where people think that is somehow a controversial statement to say that men and women are different, that there are certain things that men can do that women can't do, and there's certain things that women can do that men can't do. And then when it comes to physical power, if you take the average man and the average woman, guess what? The man's going to be more powerful because biologically we build more muscle mass much more quickly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Anyone who paid attention in biology class or just has any just basic common sense knows, right, on paper and statistically we know on average most men are going to be stronger than women. Now, can there be exceptions? Well, yeah, if I go up against Miss Universe, then yeah, there probably will be some discrepancies there. But we also know that even someone who is like middle of the road in a field, when it comes to physical strength, physical attributes, are still going to be that much stronger than the highest of women, right? You take you take some of the highest weights, for instance, in weight training, right? Some of the highest weights that women have ever done at the Olympics, and you take the largest amount of weight that they've ever done in competition. Okay, great. Now put that up against the men's, and what you'll find is that there are going to be several men that actually match that amount that are going to be much further down on that list. And what that tells us is that, okay, clearly there is a biological distinction and a biological discrepancy. They go into that. Obviously not into that much detail as I've said it, but the fact that they even make it a comment, right, to say, you can't fight like him. You're not going to be able to be him, because you are not going to ever be any bigger than this guy is. You're never going to be stronger than this guy is. But you can cheat. You can do other things. But the controversy and the reason why people kind of freak out is because she then follows that up with, you have to fight like a girl, right? So don't fight like a guy, fight like a girl. And obviously that can trigger a lot of us with PTSD, because it's like, oh, great, another one of these kind of women empowerment type stories. The difference, though, is that that's probably the best way to actually have used that expression, because she laid out, what does that mean? Fight like a girl. Okay, what does that mean you do when you're fighting up against a guy? It means you equalize. How do you do that? By cheating, by recognizing you're not going to overpower them. So you're going to use a weapon when they have none. You're going to kick them in the groin area several times. Okay, clearly that can be an advantage also. So I really like it a lot. That's why it's not a girl boss movie in that respect. And that's what's been driving me crazy. Anyone who's been saying those things in comment sections, etc., again, they either haven't watched the movie or they don't really understand exactly what the film portrayed, because it's not girl boss. Forever Sci-Fi, Ballerina just struck me as more of a rental. Nothing about it said to me, I have to see it in the theater. And I would say I would agree. As much as I'm kind of defending it, I'm more so trying to be honest. Okay, and I'm not saying that people are lying if they're saying the other, but I do think that it does require us, especially in our critiques, to be as honest as we can, because I think the story for the film is not good. I think the story has way too many problems, creates way too many more problems for the timeline of the John Wick universe movies, and also ultimately just disappoints. Doesn't really help to build much of anything. Yeah, you establish a new character that you further flesh out, but there's still so much that could have been fleshed out, and you're just not as interested, right? There's something about Keanu Reeves as an actor and as a character where you kind of care. You kind of want to know more about it. And she definitely has, Ana de Armas, who plays the lead in this one, she definitely has that a very interesting persona, right? People are drawn to her for many, many reasons, and I'm sure a lot of people in the chat are like, because she's so attractive. It's like, okay. But she also did a lot of stunts. I wouldn't say she did all of her stunts, but I know there's a lot of sequences out there that show some of the behind-the-scenes footage, and so she did learn quite a bit for this role. There's some really cool sequences where she is using a flamethrower, where she is, kind of throwing the empty ammo casings out. So that stuff is really cool. It's always cool to see them actually learning the skills and actually doing them. But the story, that's where it falls apart. Michael Brigette, what's up, Michael? Says, hey, Odin, with the new The Life of Chuck film releasing, curious what your favorite non-horror Stephen King film is. Yeah, I don't really know of a lot of Stephen King films that aren't horror in some way. I'd probably need a list of things. Man, I couldn't tell you, to be honest, because I actually don't really read a lot of Stephen King. He's kind of gone off the rails. Kimberly G, howdy all, happy Monday, happy Pentecost Monday. Geek Truth 64, it's Odin. How's it going, Geek Truth? Glad to have you here. Make sure to check out his channel. Awesome physical media channel. Always appreciate you and breaking down what's coming out in a given month on physical media. Because typically when I watch one of your videos, at least one, maybe two movies end up getting bought that day. So, and also, I remember I mentioned to you about the Kingdom of Heaven 4K Steelbooks. I did the thing that you're not typically supposed to do, but I only did it because the pricing wasn't too much higher than the MSRP. And I actually really did want this one too, because I just thought it was really cool. I did end up getting the 4K Steelbook for Kingdom of Heaven. I just really, really like this movie. I'm excited about the 4K scan, and also just to have another version of the film. Now, I will say, I hate when they say, new version, the Roadshow, Director's Cut Roadshow version. I think there's only an additional 5 or 6 minutes. So you know, it is what it is. But again, as a collector, I like to collect things that are especially maybe harder to find. This thing is like very hard to find. Someone in my Discord actually won a copy of that the other day. So, hey, congratulations to you. Jimmy A, we have John Wick at home. John Wick at home, Ballerina. What? You're saying that you have a ballerina as a child? Kicking Rumsky, have you heard of gutter covers? I've actually never heard of gutter covers, but see, in my head, all I could think of is it would have a similar problem where debris would build up over time, and then the water would just have to go somewhere else, and then it would just cause the same issues. Like the issue that was happening is that anytime that it rains very, very hard, it's dropping over the edge of the actual gutter itself. It's an old system, so I think that's a bigger problem. Cthulhu, good evening and happy Monday, Cthulhu. Good evening to you. Shorty Short, Laura, the Mono Major General. What's going on? Baba Yaga fatigue? No, that's just the thing. There's all this talk about fatigue. It's Marvel fatigue. It's Star Wars fatigue. No, it's just bad or mediocre movie fatigue. It doesn't really matter much what it is, because if it was Marvel fatigue, it would be doing worse than anything else. But it's still doing better than the vast majority of other films that come out. They still end up being some of the highest grossing films of the year. They just happen to spend too much money on them for them to make any profit back. They just happen to be far less than what they used to be during their heyday. So I would not say that is the case, because if this had been like a John Wick 5, I think it would have been done better. I do think, though, there still would have been a decrease. And it's because of where John Wick 4 ends. John Wick 4 has an ending. And it seems to, I think, bring a lot of closure. And I think that it really could stand on its own. No one really believed it when it happened, because they said, oh, well, if this film makes money, then of course we're going to keep going forward with it. But it is, again, it is interesting. I don't think, though, that it is John Wick fatigue, Baba Yaga fatigue either. Again, it really comes down to the quality of the movie itself. Kicking Rumsky, was Ana de Armas ever in a bikini in the movie? Not that I can remember. I don't really look out for that kind of stuff. Okay, get your head out of the gutter, King Rumsky. She, of course, at one point does wear a very, revealing gown, I guess you could say. And then fights in it, too. Jimmy A, I have not seen Ballerina yet, but John Wick should have ended with 4, in my opinion. I would agree with that. The ending of 4 was satisfying and ambiguous in a good way, and these movies will only run their course. Agreed. I thought 4 was kind of being almost promoted that way. I don't think they ever necessarily, marketed it as the end of the franchise, but it felt that way. It had that Toy Story 3-like ending, right? Where it's like, hey, Toy Story 3, that's all you need. That's all there is. And so when they announced Toy Story 4, then made it, and then it ended up being bad, yeah, guess what? That's going to make me mad, because now that perfect ending has been thwarted by your attempted cash grab. I think that's what 4, some people thought 4 actually was kind of like that. I think it was definitely the weakest of the movies as far as total narrative is concerned, though it did feature the best fight sequences as far as locations and other things, right? Man, the location choices for that movie are fantastic. So those have to be accounted for, of course. But I think it's going to be interesting to see where this film, money-wise at least, ends. Abomination. Hail to you, hanging out over on the Odyssey Machine. Short saying, John Wick falling down 1,000 stairs is one of the funniest scenes in any action movie I've ever seen, except for perhaps Jackie Chan's drunken boxing. Yeah, and there's some people that hate that. I think it's funny, because when I saw that scene in theaters, I thought, yeah, this is the level of insanity that this franchise has been about now since at least the second movie, right? Because the first movie is a pretty straightforward revenge tale, and then 2 is when you get into that lore, right? And so I think that is when all this kind of starts, and that's why when you get to 4, it's almost like this crescendo. So whereas Fast and Furious crescendoed all the way to a car being shot into outer space and it doesn't make any sense, what I appreciate more about the John Wick universe is that they at least establish what the world is. There are rules to be followed. So because they've done that, when you get to a dinner jacket that can stop bullets, I'm willing to buy into that, because they've done the work up front. All right, let's see. The Morak, Hail, finally got to see Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I thought it was an entertaining movie. It is. Just way, way too long. Luke Zilla, have you seen the new animated Predator movie over on Hulu? The Samurai Shogun story is probably the coolest of the 4 stories, followed by the 4th one, which offers some big lore building. I've not seen it yet. It is on my watch list, though, so it's definitely going to be on my radar. I did hear, at least from, I think it was Comics Division was watching it, that one of the stories at least goes kind of into the girl boss thing. John Mack, Mary Sue for New Generation. If you're talking about Ballerina, that ain't it, son. John Mack, you are wrong. Shorty Shorts saying here, sup, Keely? John Mack, men don't look at women as heroic people. What? Are you kidding me? So no one looked at Ripley back in the days of Alien and thought, oh, she's a hero? No one thought, oh, that type of self-sacrificial personality, no, there's nothing to attach to? Come on, dude. Be better. General Wingster, I disagree, Odin. You will always be my Miss Universe. Oh, well, that's just so sweet of you to say that. That's just so sweet of you to say. See, Shorty Short saying, Red Hot Chili Peppers had a great song called Fight Like a Brave. Sorry for the tangent. Yes, and that was the other thing, too. You had the one line in there about fight like a girl, and then you had there was a song at the very end that had the same lyric in there. The music, there's no excuse for that. That was just bad. Just wasn't good. But that line, again, in context, it really isn't bad. Oh, boy. John Mack. It's Girl Boss movie for a new audience. Nope. You are still wrong. She had moral superiority throughout the movie. Girl boss archetype. Wait. So she's the lead character and she thinks that she's right. And that's never been something that a male character has had either? Bro, please spare me. That's a terrible argument. So you're saying that you've never seen a John Wick himself claim a moral superiority where he's justifying his actions, or any other male character who's also done the same exact thing? Watching Mobland right now. You're not seeing that with any of the male characters? Bro. Please spare me the nonsense. Because that's what it is right now. It's nonsense. Jimmy A. Ana de Amas seems like a really cool person. She went on a YouTube talk show and knew a lot of modern slang. She seems pretty funny and down to earth. That's what I have heard as well. Geek True 64. Okay, here's the physical media comment here. Ballerina is getting 2 different steelbooks, Amazon and Walmart exclusives. Walmart has Lionsgate slip, but Amazon has better art with some nice neon colors. So, Geek Truth, please clarify. Does that mean that the Amazon one does not have a slipcover? Because that's a big deal for me. That's a make or break for me. Because even if it might be on paper better colors, if the design is still good on the Amazon one with the Walmart one with the Lionsgate slip, I do like that Lionsgate slip. Michael Brigette says, I know most people would answer The Shawshank Redemption or The Green Mile, maybe Stand By Me. I always forget he wrote those, Michael Brigette. So that's the other thing too. The name usually comes out much more clearly when it's a horror film versus rather than being a regular movie. So yes, Shawshank Redemption out of that list would absolutely be my top choice for sure. Green Mile's good. Stand By Me also good. Cthulhu, Stand By Me for a Stephen King movie. That's good but not horror. Yes, would totally agree. Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father. Saying, ahoy, shouldn't it be white for Mary, Mother of the Church? It is Monday of Pentecost. Father, you know this very, very well, that I follow the traditional calendar of the church, and there's nothing wrong with the new feast that was established, but we already have the Marian feast day, I think, that really fits that much more clearly, which is January 1st. But again, nothing wrong with that. I would just say that the fact that there's always been a privileged octave in Pentecost Monday should absolutely take precedence there. I have no problem having multiple feast days. That's why, hey, blessed feast of Mary, Mother of the Church. But no, Pentecost Monday. Pentecost Monday is where we currently are at. I got my nice little traditional calendar right here. And yes, first class feast. And that's why it is red. Because we also have Pentecost Monday, Pentecost Tuesday, Ember Wednesday, because the Ember Tide happens during this time of year as well for this sequence. So there's a time of fasting that can happen. Pentecost Thursday, Ember Friday, Ember Saturday, first Vespers of Trinity Sunday, and then the 15th is, of course, Trinity Sunday, with Corpus Christi being on Thursday. And that's something I really wish the church would come back to. That's my theological moment of the night. I'm sick and tired of us moving feast days to Sunday. It's lazy, and I know the excuse is we want to make sure as many people as they can go to Mass. Then offer more Mass times and try to be better at your catechesis. Because if a person physically cannot go because they have work, guess what? They are dispensed from that. But what we've turned into is we've turned into an excuse machine, and that's the reason why you have people going on Saturday nights for the Vigil Mass, the massive anticipation on Saturdays when they don't have to. They could be going on Sunday to Mass, but instead they're going on Saturday because they want to do stuff on Sunday. That, again, whole thing since Vatican II, specifically since the whole concilium nonsense and the changing of the calendar, has caused so many problems. Sorry, it's a sensitive subject. But again, I have no issue with that as a feast being commemorated. But no, it is Pentecost Monday, so rocking the red for Pentecost Monday. Jimmy A. I was referring to the at-home meme, basically saying the version at home is always the lesser version. Okay. Short, I really like Thunderbolts. I know, Laura, when I saw your review for Thunderbolts, I thought, no, Laura, no. Because usually I respect Laura's opinions and thoughts on movies. I still do. But when it comes to this one, no. And again, people can have fun with whatever movie they want. And there is something to be said. I'm sure you have heard nothing but negative things about the movie. And so when you go in with that low mindset, you probably don't come out of it as bad. Like when I saw Fan Four Stick, I knew the movie was trash. I knew the movie was terrible. But I will say I came out entertained nonetheless. So let's see. He is just going on. John Mack, heterosexual men want bikinis and nudes, you Puritan. What? John Mack, I have no idea what you're doing. Are you just trolling right now or just being a jerk? I really just don't know. Kigan Rumsky, LOL, good info, no problem. Jimmy A, if it makes a difference, I'm trying to not simp over Ana de Armas at all on this chat. Easier said than done, but she has more to offer beyond her appearance. Yeah, she actually does have, she is a solid performer in the films as well. And yeah, honestly, that makes me sad, that first part. It does make me sad because I do think that there are too many people that are objectifying her in a way that is unbecoming of just one, men, but also, and most especially of anyone who also is Christian. Again, I don't know what the religious beliefs are of the people that are saying some of these comments, but if they claim Christianity in any way, I think that it raises a lot of problems as far as that. Even if you're not Catholic, to view another person as an object of your own gratification, to dehumanize someone in that way is a big problem. We got Mr. Roy in the chat. Hello. What's up, Mr. Roy? One of my chosen of Valhalla. Cthulhu, saw Phoenician Scheme, perfect story, welcome religious subjects, cinematography, excellent, casting, excellent, but everyone acting the same way ruined it. My heart broke. Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat, Cthulhu. There was a lot of things I really liked about Phoenician Scheme, because I got to see that as well, the new Wes Anderson movie. And the way I worded it in my critic list review was that it's not as good as of the more modern films that have come out from him. Grand Budapest Hotel is pretty up there for me as far as one of my favorites. It's probably also one of the more mainstream ones too. So it's not there. But luckily, it's also not anywhere close to Asteroid City. So I love one of the comments in my video said, I think he meant Astronaut City. But it was also, he picked up on I don't think he really cares one way or the other if he got it right. Yeah, I don't. But I appreciate the fact check there. But yeah, Asteroid City was not good. And then the French Dispatch was fine. But I don't remember anything about it. And that's kind of how I feel like Phoenician Scheme's going to be. It's going to be one you're like, okay, the performances are good, I guess. But yeah. And as far as the religious subjects, it kind of goes into that a bit. There's a moral story, a moral tale in the movie. But whenever there's a story where there is someone entering into religious life, and then there's like pushing and pulling on that vocation of hers, to where by the end of it, she's no longer wearing the habit and you can see she's kind of given up on that. That is where I get more of the anti-Christian. I'm not saying that it is an anti-Christian movie, but it is one where it's like, okay, you had a character who was pursuing a vocation that did make the story interesting. I think it would have actually been much more interesting had she continued, even after all of that stuff that happened, continued on with the vocation instead. But yeah. CM Chunk, I'm one of those people who hate the stare bit in John Wick 4. And again, I remember when it happened at the time, I said, I totally understand why anyone would hate that. It's a legitimate criticism. But for someone like me who had, again, bought into that universe and bought into just the insane over-the-topness of it, it was so funny. So funny. King Kane Rumsky, speaking of Ripley and Alien, did we ever figure out why the alien didn't move in the shuttle or pod? I never got that. That's a good question. My guess is that because it was smart, and so it was trying to make sure that the shuttle was... It's been a while since I've seen it, but the shuttle hadn't yet left, and so it was trying to make sure that its plan went forward, maybe. I think it was supposed to be more of a strategic move. It's been a while, and also sometimes the Alien films get kind of mixed up in my head. Justin C. Haven't seen Ballerina yet, but bummed to hear the story isn't good, especially after the final reckoning. Perhaps the Venetian Scheme is worth to watch, if better than Asteroid City. Yes. Again, worth the watch is up to you. I think going to see Venetian Scheme for matinee pricing, or if you have the AMC A-list or something similar, I think it's worth it for that. I think you could do that. Also, if you wait for it to come out on VOD, might be worth it for that to rent. There's other ways to watch things these days too. Might be worth at least the time. I don't think it's a complete waste of time. Asteroid City, complete waste of time. Venetian Scheme, there's some good stuff in there, but it's still not perfect. Caveat ties, what's going on? Luke Zilla had to say, while one of the stories in this new Predator movie does kind of flirt with the girl boss territory, she is given a motherly protective side. At least that's how I interpreted it. Interesting. Okay. Laura saying, sup, Gary. Gary. How's it going, Gary? I know he does claim he watches everything, but there's just too many things going on at a time, too many hours in the day. There's only so much that he can watch. Caveat ties, will Ballerina make $220 million? We'll go into the box office in a second, but I know the early conversation caused a lot of people to come up. Father Christopher Miller saying, you could do a red-white Divine Mercy mix. Or do you follow Divine Mercy Chapel Devotion? I like the Divine Mercy devotion. I think too much is given to it, though. I think there are other things that we could be given attention to versus Divine Mercy. And it really comes down to the initial devotion's good. How the modern church has used it has been bad, especially under Pope Francis, because he focused way too much on mercy and not nearly enough on, there's still sin, and there are still consequences of sin. Mercy, of course, is important, but there is such a thing as righteous judgment. Geek True 64, they both have slip covers. Nice. Walmart's exclusive is a better slip. The slip for Amazon is just clear with a title at the bottom, not as dynamic, but better art. Okay, but are they both plastic slips? I guess that's the key question. Father Christopher Miller saying, and second breakfast with middle afternoon lunch. Interesting. Father saying, hey, Ascension Thursday is a holy day in my diocese. It wasn't in mine. And because I was traveling, I actually did not get to go to the Ascension Mass. Because they didn't have the Ascension Mass on Thursday when I was here. Even though I tried to talk to my priest and ask, hey, could you please offer traditional Latin Mass since it is, following that calendar. He wasn't able to respond. He's a very busy guy, so I don't put any blame on him. And then when I got into New Orleans, they both there's a big church, St. Patrick's, and then there's also an SSPX chapel as well. They both follow in the traditional Latin Mass rite, at least for St. Patrick's. They follow the traditional calendar, and so theirs was the Sunday after Ascension, and so I wasn't able to do it. And so that's a huge problem. So it's interesting because they don't maybe often consider people like me, where I go exclusively to the traditional Mass, which has been under attack in so many different ways. But no, that's a something I have a huge problem with, because by trying to water down the faith by making things easier, we've kind of lost the seriousness of it, right? It's just like with COVID. Oh, wait, you're saying I don't have to go to mass? You're saying that it's not important that I'm physically there and that I can actually watch on a TV? And I know that there's, again, maybe certain priests, certain bishops that did a better job explaining it, but that was the perception. Well, of course, why do you think some people just didn't go back to mass or kept watching it on TV instead? Because the ability to teach the faith has been so massively corrupted, and it really all ties back into these little things, whether it's going after the fasting restrictions, alleviating that, making everything as easy as possible. Why do you think we're seeing some religions that are much more traditional growing exponentially, especially when they have much more rigorous fasting requirements? Clearly, the fasting is not what's keeping people away. So, if anything, it's going to make it more serious. It's going to make people take it more seriously. Imagine if we actually had a true liturgical revival in the church. Now, again, that's more of a pipe dream out of me, because that type of revival would be a return to the Latin Mass, or at the very least our options are now the Latin Mass or the Ordinariate Rite, which is essentially a Latin Mass in English, but I digress. Not the time for that tonight. Odin, not the time. Shorty Short saying, hey, Florence Pugh made me cry. Love her. She's a great actress. She is a great actress. Of course you don't, General Wingster, because you are our pet troll. Caveat Ties Fan Forte had no redeeming qualities. Only superior movie I gave. Dude, seriously? Again, you're right. It has no redeeming qualities, but that's why it's so bad it's funny. Jimmy A. For the record, when I said simping, I just meant finding her attractive and nothing impure. Oh yeah, I was more so referring to the other things being mentioned, not you specifically. Just posted them twice because I tagged myself the first time. My bad. No, Jimmy A. I wasn't going after you, man. Was not going after you. Will Riker 94, welcome back to the chat. KN Kareen, hail to you. Short saying, so we disagree on Excalibur, Rogue One, and Thunderbolts. Yeah. It's interesting. There are very few things we disagree on, but a lot of things we do. Keely Chow, of course, only hanging out for a little bit, posting the ice cream, and then leaving. How dare you? Heartbreak Ridge. Hello, all. P.S. Mobland is extra super awesome. Yes, it is fan-freaking-tastic. So good. And every episode ends with you being like, whoa, what's going to happen next? And every person in the cast is playing their roles to perfection. In fact, as soon as this is over, I'm probably going to go grab some kind of dessert upstairs. I don't have any ice cream, unfortunately. And then come back down here to my office, curl up, and watch a couple more of the Moblands. And Lady Hawk. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Lady Hawk as well. Father, Odin's on a roll. Rant. Anyway, I'm on your side on the holy days. Well, I appreciate that. Apologies, everyone. No problem, Father. No problem, Father. Thanks for being a member, of course, here on the channel. And I appreciate that. Again, it's the watering down of the faith. And I think that we could say, all right, what is the watering down of the faith since Vatican II led to? The, lowest numbers ever of people attending Mass, the lowest numbers ever of people believing in the real presence of the Eucharist, amongst so many other things. And again, there's many things that have led to that, but we can't deny that the way and the law of worship is the law of belief. The way we worship is what we believe. And if everyone's being told, oh, look, we're all kumbaya coming together at this table with the priest facing me, and it's all this thing that we're in this together, and oh, we got all the music and everything, takes all the mystery out of it. Guess what? No wonder why people don't take the Eucharist as seriously anymore. Cthulhu, I hear Ascension Mass, and all I can think of is some MMO power-up. His piety is over 9,000! Yes. I appreciate that reference. Father Miller, we have 11 young men entering the seminary this fall. Yes. And what's interesting is that there are a huge number of seminarians entering into various dioceses across the country and the world, and a lot of them much more traditionally minded, much more open to desiring to learn the traditional liturgies and other things. There's a huge influx of religious entering into the more religious orders, the more traditional orders, especially. That's both within holy orders and also the religious orders, the charisms out there. A lot to be said. Justin C. Side note, I was the one who made the astronaut asteroid city correction comment on yesterday's box office video. Yes, Justin C. Legend. Yes. I appreciated it so much because as soon as you said it, I'm like, you know what? I did say astronaut city, and you're right. But also, it doesn't matter. I loved it. King and Rumsky, in my opinion, if you want the Catholic Church to get back to its roots, you first need many more strong men as priests. And we're getting that, dude. Here's the thing that people need to realize, that men and the young men entering into priesthood now are some of the most, quote, conservative, I think more traditional is the better word for it, are some of the most traditionally minded seminarians that we've ever had. So in the next, the church works in decades and centuries, not in years or weeks or months. So do not be surprised that in 50 years, the Mass looks very different, and Vatican II and how it's viewed is very different, amongst a lot of other things. I think there will be some massive changes. All right, Guy, thank you very much for tagging, saying, hey, Odin, how was your day? Do you think that Donnie Yen spinoff film will happen still if Ballerina did not open high? That's the big question. Yeah, I don't think it's going to make its money back, but it could, theoretically. It's not the biggest loser I've seen at the box office thus far. We'll dive into those numbers in a second. But yeah, there was a talk about Donnie Yen getting a spinoff. There was a talk about Norman Reedus, who is a character in the Ballerina film, getting his own franchise. And then the movie itself of Ballerina sets up for more movies too. So their mindset, I think, was, hey, let's try to build this universe out and try and get on course to have several films released over the course of many years. At least that's the assumption based off of what decisions they're making. I don't know. I think it's hard to justify that when you're not making a lot at the box office. So, Icthulu, you didn't like Lady Hawk Philistine. I just said I wasn't crazy about it. Father Miller saying, my diocese, we're traditionally minded. There are SEMs. Yep. There it is. All right, let's go ahead and then officially dive into it. 51 minutes in the chat. That's the best place to be, though. So let's go ahead and actually start to go into the main topic. And we've been talking about it already, so it's not like we're completely off topic here. But we do need to talk a little bit about the truth about both the box office and also the movie Ballerina, or from the world of John Wick, Ballerina. Glad that they've been promoting it and selling tickets with just the name Ballerina instead, because Lord, that would have been a mouthful. But before we dive into those numbers, that we're about to enter into a world of numbers, and you've come to the right place. All right, so just sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Time to see a real math magician at work.
That's right, everybody. It's time to see some math. You are about to see a real math magician at work here. And so, as you can see over on thenumbers.com, we've gotten some updates, right? The actuals from the weekend have been reported, and whereas in the initial opening weekend numbers, 25 million was being floated around by the studio as its estimated weekend totals, it actually has been worse than that, making only 24.5. That's not the biggest drop in the world, and again, this is very normal, right? All films will see adjustments. Sometimes the adjustments go higher, sometimes lower. In the modern box office, usually it's on the lower side and the lower end. The reason why this number is a problem, $24 million domestic and only $26 million international for a total opening of $50 million, is that this puts it as the lowest, or at least one of the lowest box office in the history of the franchise. We brought this chart up over the weekend for the box office breakdown, and as you can see, now with the film being at 24.5, so let's go ahead and get that number up to date. So 24.5, what you see is that this, though on paper, this is all numbers here adjusted for inflation, domestic opening weekend, right? The only film Ballerina has beaten when adjusted for inflation is the first John Wick, which makes sense because it was a brand new property, a brand new IP. No one knew anything about it. And look what happened after, right? It doubled its audience the following film. It doubled its audience after that, right? It continued to build after that, right? The doubling stopped, but it still increased nonetheless. But with these official numbers, what we can also now say is that though it did make more money than the first John Wick, it did not sell more tickets. So going to the weekend, the projections indicated Ballerina would have had the second lowest number of opening weekend tickets sold domestically. Again, these are estimates based off of the ticket prices at their time. Back in 2014, the average ticket price was around $8.17. So we take that number, we adjust those numbers for inflation because of the fact that this number is adjusted for inflation. So it just makes it normal, makes it even. And so roughly 1.7 million tickets were sold domestically in John Wick's opening weekend. Now, because of that, and because of that adjustment that's just happened, Ballerina now is only at 1.75 million. Now, it's not a huge difference, 14,000 tickets or so. The fact still remains, Ballerina is now officially the worst opening weekend in the John Wick universe history. Because even if you try to argue that point about money, okay, what you have to remember is that money is not the only currency. Butts in seats is also a major currency as well. Having more people in your audience, having more people to give you that word of mouth that you oftentimes need in today's world, especially to make money after the fact. And that word of mouth that was so crucial to the future success of John Wick. John Wick, of course, had a massive following on VOD, most especially on Blu-ray, DVD, all of the physical media platforms as well, right? A film that got passed on saying, hey, you need to watch this movie. Hey, you need to watch this movie. Got picked up by the different streamers, got picked up more so by terrestrial television also. People got introduced to the world of John Wick. And so that's why, because of that slow growth, positive word of mouth, like almost overwhelmingly positive, it was able to build. Ballerina, on the other hand, though it used John Wick heavily in its marketing, and they, in fact, changed elements of the story to make it so that John Wick could be in this universe at this time, and not just for a cameo either, but there's actually a portion of the film, slight spoiler, I guess, he shows up for a period of maybe 10 minutes or more, and that's actually quite a bit of time for someone you think would have just been kind of a, oh, let me show up for a second and then disappear. No, he actually ends up being a part of the story. He actually ends up being a featured character. So not just a cameo, but an actual featured character. That's also, though, bring up the other discussion, right? So obviously these are numbers that are much lower. Right now, we could say the projections are not great, right? With the $50 million opening weekend, if the film performs the way that most films tend to do over the course of their runs, what that means is that this movie will very likely only make it to $150 million. Now, as you can see, it's only $111 million in the red. Why is that the case? Because it costs around $90 million budget, which is a total cost of $135 million, because usually you're doubling, or rather, usually you're taking your budget and having that, add that on, that gives you your total cost with marketing. There's a good chance that this marketing cost could have been higher, though, so take these numbers with a grain of salt. Break even, though, for most films today is 3 times their total budget. So not marketing, but just total production budget. So 3 times $90 million is around $270 million as a break-even point. So the question earlier was asked, do I think it's going to reach 220? Based on the numbers we have right here, no. Now, that being said, what happened not too long ago with a movie like Sinners? Right, Sinners box office, the opening was not all that impressive. It was impressive for the movie that it was. No one expected it to make as much as it did, but it was the second weekend that really made everyone say, whoa, there's something unique here, there's something special here. Because based off of a 63 global opening for Sinners back then, okay, 3 times your budget, when your budget's around $90 to $100 million, and your break-even's around $285 million, okay, 63 times 3, that does not get you to that break-even point. That does not get you there. Okay? However, what happened by its second weekend? It had gone up $100 million. So no real drop there. It actually increased. Right? So no percentage drop off between week 1 and week 2. It actually saw an increase. Right? We know that it was a very, very small drop domestically, single digits. But then it was also a very strong hold internationally as well. So these are the cases that could happen. Now, do I think that's going to happen with Ballerina? We're not seeing the same kind of word of mouth. We're seeing a much more split decision on Ballerina, okay? As you can see, as of the last update, I'll go ahead and refresh just to see if anyone's added in. No, 43 votes over on Critic List, a 72% rad score. I gave it a 55% decent. It's fine. The action sequences are phenomenal. Ana de Armas is great. There are some really cool moments that I think are so unique to this movie specifically that I'll probably want to rewatch those specific moments again in the future. But that's really where the positive elements end. The story is a bit of a mess. The addition of Keanu Reeves as John Wick, for as long as he is in the movie, just does not make any sense, just does not really work. You have the addition of other characters like Norman Reedus' character of Daniel Pine, right, who is another hitman, right? And so these are all elements that are a bit all over the place, that are a bit scatterbrained. And it honestly feels like when they were coming together to make this movie, they had an initial idea of, wouldn't it be cool if we had this? And then when they got to the how do we make that happen portion of the story writing, they kind of just said, oh, let's just throw a bunch of random things and see if it sticks. And hey, we need to sell this movie. We need this movie to make some money. We're spending a lot of money on this. Let's just go ahead and make sure that Keanu Reeves shows up in it to sell more tickets. And guess what? If this is what Keanu Reeves' involvement selling more tickets is supposed to look like, oh boy. I can only imagine what it would have been like had they not done that. But to be fair, had they not had John Wick in, had they not had that prominent position, maybe the trailers would have been different. Maybe the marketing would have been different. And maybe, just maybe, it would have been different enough to make people maybe have more interest in it. But instead what we got was kind of a, not shot for shot, but very much a beat for beat reimagining adaptation of the stories that we've already seen, right? We've already seen this story play out in the other John Wick movies. We've already seen those moments of, okay, I'm going to the Continental, and oh, I'm doing this. And it's those member berries, right? Of, oh, remember when they did this and that? Well, look, she's doing it too. She's doing it as well. That's a problem. And it's that I think is causing the biggest issue, is that because of those splits in the audience score, you definitely have a lot of people that are going to be driven away, that are not going to have, or that they are actually going to lose interest. But this does raise up the other question. So even though there are issues with this movie, and the audience is very divided on this, some people really, really love it, some people really, really hate it. The lie being perpetuated, and I made this point earlier, the lie that's being perpetuated out there is that it's doing bad because it's a girl boss movie. Now, could it be that there's a perception that it's a girl boss movie and that could potentially be driving people away? Yes. If you say that it is the perception of it, sure. The movie itself, though, is not. I've seen the movie. I've listened to the script. I've seen how they've played it out. And it's not. If it was the girl boss movie that people think that this movie is going to be, she would be whipping up every guy from here to Kingdom Come with no actual need for any special skills, with no actual need of weapons, and with no need of any help either. But that's not actually what we get in this movie. As I mentioned earlier, for those that may have missed it, in the beginning when she's going through her training, she continues to get her ass kicked. She continues to be thrown over and over again. And what happens? She is told, stop trying to fight like a guy. He's always going to be bigger than you. He's always going to be stronger than you. And there's nothing you can do to change that. Instead, do what? Change the rules. Change the environment. Cheat. That's the advice she's actually given, is at one point to cheat. Basically, you have to make up for that lacking, right? The lack of strength that you have, you're never going to get that back. You're never going to be able to magic yourself to punching some guy in the face because you have all that power. In fact, at one point, she does deck some guy in the face, and while she's like, I broke my hand, he's like stumbling back a little bit and then coming right back. So it is much more realistic in the portrayal of how she fights against these bigger opponents. It's a lot of the use of the weapons and of the skills of using the weight of the guy and the momentum of that versus her having some powerful strength. She never at one point has a hand-to-hand combat and wins or is able to hold her own. And the best example of this I can give is at the very end, she has a very quick fight with John Wick, and John Wick whoops her. It's like him playing with a toy. Where it's like, he's like, I don't even want to hurt you, so I'm just going to knock you off to the side every time that you try to come after me. So the lie and the truth that needs to be stated is that this is not a girl boss movie, no matter how many times people want to say it or want to believe that it is. I'm here to tell you that it's not. If you can point to something else that is, in and of itself, proof of it being a full-fledged girl boss movie. I'm more than willing to hear it, but I haven't heard anything up to this point except for some random rantings from somebody who I think doesn't quite understand reality. Anyway, let's go back to Short. Maybe Wes should do another animated movie. I actually did not like Fantastic Mr. Fox. I got very bored by that movie. Now, I watched it when I was in high school. Maybe I need to revisit it. King Kane Rumsky said, love that Catholic Church update. Good info and thanks. Yeah, the future is very, very bright. With Pope Leo, I think Pope Leo has been doing a fantastic job so far as Pope. I think that he has been able to really calm a lot of the concerns and the problems that people had. He's not perfect, right? He's a human. No human is perfect, even if they are the Pope. But I'm looking forward to the next 1, 2, maybe even third Pope from now. Because by that point, you will have likely a group of cardinals that are much more traditionally minded. That's the thing. That's the key. Hardwick saying, there's a fan edit of Lady Hawk that significantly improves it by replacing the cheesy synth score with music by Jerry Goldsmith. I think you've mentioned that to me. Cthulhu, Ballerina is basically profitable according to Tom and Valiant Renegade since they pre-sold. Also, math is next to godliness. I've not seen their coverage of that. So obviously, if we're talking about it having sold off the rights, and that's why it's important also to mention when it comes to movies, when I say that films are flops, we have to understand that we're talking theatrically flops, right? So the fact it's in theaters right now and it's not made X amount of money makes it theatrically a flop. That means it doesn't take into account VOD sales. It doesn't take into account Blu-ray sales. It doesn't take into account future sales that could happen. So that's why I think the film will probably make enough money at the box office so that maybe, again, it's hovering around $100 million in the red here. So that's not a good place to be, but it also did just open. So the numbers haven't been strong, but I could see the film holding well enough because the word of mouth is veering positive. I could see it maybe getting to cutting that loss by maybe even half, maybe only being 50 million in the red, maybe doing even better than that. And if it gets to 50 million or less in the red, then yeah, deals like that for the future of being on a streaming service or VOD or whatever it might be, yeah, you might be able to have a deal that makes up for that 50 million or less that is left over to be taken care of. That is absolutely something that can happen. And that's why when it comes to movies like Snow White, where we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in the red, it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, there's no deals that are going to help you get that money back. They're going to help you get profitable. And also, that's not where you want to be with a movie. You don't want to have to say, yeah, at some future time, we might make our money back. No one should ever want to be there, right? Gary Banjo Sandwich Worthington saying, Ballerina, she met John Wick to tie her into the Law film. What? Sahil99, I have the Regal Pass, but I just realized a ticket costs $20 here in Atlanta. But if it's the Regal Pass equivalent to AMC, it shouldn't cost you $20. I'm confused. Luxzilla. Do you think How to Train Your Dragon can open $100 million domestic this weekend? I do think that it has a good chance. The last I saw on the early projections, so unfortunately, Box Office Theory has now paywalled their 5-week tracking. I understand why. Obviously, it's a business decision. It makes me mad, though, because I was really enjoying those and relying on them for certain things. And also, that information is going to get leaked anyway, so I guess it's not the worst thing in the world, but it does make it that much more difficult for me to see. I want to say the tracking on How to Train Your Dragon was not as high as what a lot of people thought. I would not be surprised if walk-up traffic for that movie is very high this weekend. And yeah, 100 million domestic, I think is on the table for How to Train Your Dragon. I do. Sahil, not surprised movies are making money like they used to. Studios need to cut the budget in order to have a chance of making profits. By the way, love the show. Hey, Sahil99, you're always in the show, man. And I know that you've super chatted previous times before that, so I always appreciate you being here, being a supporter on the channel. And yeah, you're right. Too many of these movies are just not living up to the budgets that they spend into them. Gary Banjo Sandwich, Odin, so doing the math, it is a flop. Yep. As of right now, it is a theatrical flop. I don't want to say that every single time, but I mean, whenever I say a flop, that's what I'm saying. Hardwick, does Ana de Armas' character in Ballerina have more meaningful or heroic motivation than John Wick? I'm tired of all the shades of gray in the John Wick universe. Yeah, I would say so. This is getting into actual background biographical story here. So if anyone does not want to know anything about Ana de Armas' character, you can go ahead and just maybe mute for like a few seconds. So I'll just mention it quickly. So in 3, 2, 1. So basically, as a child, her father is killed, and her motivation is that she wants to get revenge on behalf of the people that killed her father. So again, I think that it's actually a very clear motivation from the very beginning. There's obviously a lot of extra things that are added in that help to raise the intrigue of it, the layers of what she has to figure out about, hey, how do I figure out who actually, did this thing to me in my life? And then finding out, hey, maybe my family that I've joined to try to gain those skills to do those things, maybe they are not being completely upfront and honest with me. Maybe they're trying to hold back certain information. So yeah. Kane Rumsky, in Ballerina, was anyone made excommunicado? Not formally. There's definitely a moment where people could be, for sure. I guess you could argue there are characters that experience the effects of excommunicado, but unfortunately there is not the actual expression used by Winston, of all people, especially, to say, you are excommunicado. Heartbreak Rage, Ana's character is in solely for revenge. Agreed. Does not care for the family dynamic, for sure. King and Rumsky, in my opinion, it's not so much girl bosses, it's women acting like men. Again, though, what do we even mean by that? Are we saying that women aren't able to seek vengeance and revenge? That women cannot learn skills? That's the thing, all right? I think that we just need to figure out exactly what we mean by those. We need to figure out what we mean by that. Regarding her father's, yeah. So I can't, unfortunately, for anyone who doesn't want to know anything about the plot, I can't stop people from mentioning it in the chat, but I'm going to try to gloss over them if I can. But I understood what you were saying there. Heartbreak Ridge saying, I also give the film credit for creativity and how a couple fights evolved, and for working in 2 fights with women. For me, yeah, some of the coolest action sequences of the franchise are in this, with the weapons they choose. This one's not much of a spoiler because it's just mentioning what they're using. But if you don't want to know even that, then, close your ears for like 2 seconds. But the use of a flamethrower and the use of the grenades are just, chef's kiss. CM Chunk, I was taught the same thing when I took Taekwondo, since I have a fighting disadvantage because I'm in a wheelchair. Whoa. My Forget Box Office Theory says that How to Train Your Dragon is tracking opening weekend is 66.77 million with 72 million targeted opening. Is that the most recent update? Because I know that was I think that sounds about where the 5-week tracking was on that movie. Let me see if he has. So he's got the 4-week tracking here. Oh, it is available still. Huh, that's interesting. So yeah, Ballerina opening 26 million was the low end. So yeah, that hit the low end of it. Maybe this is so I think it's all the future updates that were taken away. But yeah, How to Train Your Dragon, the range was 67 to 77, $72 million. The last time that was updated, or maybe he put something behind a paywall. I don't know what it was though. Anyway, glad that this is still here though. So yeah, this was updated 4 days ago. So again, a lot more data has come in at this point. So it wouldn't surprise me because box office theory is usually pretty good. I also, again, just knowing what I know about that franchise and with Epic Universe being launched, I just can't see them not reaching $100 million. I think it's going to happen. Laura not wanting to know any spoilers. I do apologize if any spoilers came through. Physics Channel Katie Lee saying, I watched Ballerina and I enjoyed the movie. Yeah, so remember, I went in for that movie it was my most anticipated movie of the year for 2 years in a row because of the delays. It didn't live up to that, unfortunately. Again, that's why I gave it a 55%, a 5.5 out of 10. Another way of putting it, right? a decent score. It's a decent movie. There's some things worth praising. There's some things that are worth commending, and there's other things that we could really do without. Jimmy A saying, not to be sexist, but lacking forgiveness and holding grudges can be seen as more feminine traits. Ah, well, you said it, not me. And I mean, that's something that all of us can do. Like, that's the thing that also we need to remember. Just because there's certain that might be considered more feminine or more masculine because on average more men do something or experience something, or on average more women do something or experience something, those aren't the rules, right? And so, yeah. Let's see, Shorty Short saying, I love How to Train Your Dragon series, and there's no way I'm seeing that remake. Horrible casting decisions. Yeah, and it's not just the Astrid one either. I think that they got the main guy right. He seems like a pretty good choice for that. But also, I think the way that they did the costuming, because for some of them, it always bothers me whenever they make live action remakes and they make a point to say, oh, we care so much about adapting this authentically. And so they make certain characters look a certain way that's like comic accurate or is animated film accurate, but it doesn't work for the real world. And when they say at the same time, yes, we care so much about that accuracy, we're now also going to cast an actress that looks nothing like the original character. That's where the problem actually for me more so comes in, is if you're doing an adaptation and you're doing your own thing with it, okay, there's some leeway there, I guess. Depends. But when you're like, oh no, we're going to make these guys look really weird because we want them to look like the cartoon, but it won't really look good or work well for the real world. Okay, well, what's the deal here? It's kind of like with Harry Potter. They recently released, this was just earlier today, that they announced some more casting. So some of the big ones where they announced the young actor that's going to play Draco Malfoy and the actor that's going to play Lucius Malfoy. And what's interesting about Lucius is that he's pretty young, surprisingly. And I think the actor who plays them was born in the 80s. So he's like in his late 30s, early 40s. And look, the thing that people will bring up is probably what? How old was he when how old was he when the books came around? Oh, he was about that age. I think Tom Felton should have gotten it, but again, that's just me. But the fact that they're caring so much about the key core details of the story, but then they're like, oh, for Snape? Oh, yeah. I guess we forgot for that casting to care that much about book accuracy. That's the issue. If you're going to try to claim that you're going to be book accurate or you're going to give a faithful adaptation, but then you make decisions that clearly fly in the face of that while justifying others that maybe don't work in the real world with it, it's like the whole Guy Gardner thing. Making him look like Fester Adams with that haircut. Cthulhu, no female action movie will do half of what a male action movie does. Look at La Femme Nikita versus Commando, Long Kiss Goodnight versus John Wick. People don't want to see women in harm's way culturally. There's a fair point to that, for sure. But also, I think it depends on the movie, too. I look to something, and again, there's a variation to this, right? But I look to an Alita Battle Angel. A lot of people really like that movie, especially after the fact. And that technically features a female. Now, you could say it's an android, so that's why it's a difference, but it's still a female protagonist. Action. Thanos Felicitas. I have seen cosplayers at DragonCon who wear the costumes that look good in real life. Yeah. But in a movie screen, not necessarily. Lucius was definitely mid-30s in the book. Okay. There it is. Short, the actor who played Lucius had a lot of input of how his character looked with a long blonde hair, cane, and wand. You mean in the original? Oh, I mean, that actor is just is fantastic. Is absolutely fantastic. Let's see. Beetle Christian. What's up, Beetle Christian? I don't know if I've seen you in the chat before or not, but appreciate the name. Says, no shame, I have yet to sit down and watch Lord of the Rings. I've only seen Fellowship once many years ago. As a traditional Catholic, I am certain I will find it more endearing these days. Yeah, I would say that the original films, right, Lord of the Rings, live action, I think those are well worth watching. Because it's one of those weird things where even though it's adapting the books, and even though it makes a lot of changes, it's almost universally, obviously there's exceptions to everything, but it's overwhelmingly enjoyed by both people that read the books and didn't, by people who love the books and those that didn't. Like, I think that's one of the special things about it, was it made very methodical changes to certain things, added certain things well. Different than what they did with The Hobbit, where they just added a bunch of stuff that wasn't needed and didn't even do the authentic stuff well. Shout out again to Hardwick for setting me up with that 2-part edition of The Hobbit, where they cut all the extra crap out and just leave you the bare bones, what was in the book material. Yeah. Shame this man, says General Wingster. How dare you? Cthulhu, once again, the Potty series needs to lean into diversity and cast Queen Latifah as Professor Minerva McGonagall. Oh, man. Could you imagine? Let's see. Shorty Short. Yeah, he changed the wardrobe they had planned for Lucius. Improved things. Ah, nice. Yeah, Jason Isaacs? I mean, he's just a great actor, so that doesn't really surprise me all that much that he would bring that in. I mean, he was perfect for the role. But it's like when you go back to that original film, right, and you think about for the original role of Snape, when you read the book and then you see Alan on the screen, you're just like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, this isn't the right for the book, but as soon as he says anything, turn to page 394, you're just immediately accepting it. So even book fans are like, yeah, that he's nothing like the book, but you know what? We're okay with that because he made it his own, and it was really good. The M4 book edit is so good. Then as with us, now there is a white Black Panther in the comics. Yes, we went over that though, so it's not like as big as some people were making out to be. Basically, it sounds like it's a villain who is going to take on the moniker of the Black Panther, and so it's meant to be more of a villain thing than anything else, is at least the perception. Kagan Rumsky, when I watched the Lord of the Rings movies, I was always waiting for Thor to come in and save the day. I can teach you how to bewitch the mind and ensnare the senses, Mr. Potter. Rest in peace, Alan Rickman. What a great actor. If y'all have never seen the last film he did before he passed away, Eye in the Sky, it's actually a really good movie. Really good moral tale. I use it in my classes every year to teach morality. And to get a discussion going on, hey, if you were that pilot, what would you have done? It's one of those fun situations. And he's not, he doesn't have all of the lines in the movie, but he's a very featured, prominent character. He did such a good job. Just there was almost nothing he couldn't do. Short saying Rickman was friends with Emma Thompson and helped her through her divorce from that Hasbrana. Oh, yeah. He seemed like a good shoulder for someone to go to. That's for sure. All right. Well, we are just about right at the end, so we'll go ahead and start to wrap things up. I really like the Rankin and Bass version of Hobbit and Lord of the Rings animated. Okay, I believe that's the one that features like the old school, 60s and 70s folk music. I have only seen the Hobbit version of that. And, of course, ever since South Park did a parody of that, whenever I try to remember the songs, all I can remember is the version that South Park did. Lemony Wings says Johnny is going far and wide. Lemony Wings to Johnny. Lemony Wings. Lemony Wings. Oh, man. I love that. We watched that cartoon, the animated Hobbit, Rankin and Bass, so many times. And it just has that cheesy guitar. If that's the one that I'm thinking of. If it's a different one, then favorite Rickman movie was Sense and Sensibility. Nice. It's a good shout. Cthulhu, who's a member, saying that the villain taking over Wakanda will expect law and order and economic responsibility. No idea why modern writers have the concept of reality. Well, actually, I mean, according to the movies, right, Wakanda was actually very much more of a America First type nation, right? It had borders. It was focused on itself. All right, cheers all. Goodbye for now. Absolutely. Stop speaking gibberish, says General Wingstraw. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for another great show. Jimmy A here, Eye in the Sky. I think of Alan Parsons' project of the same name. Interesting. Aaron Paul of Breaking Bad fame is actually the pilot in Eye in the Sky. Anyway, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching tonight. So yeah, the truth about Ballerina has to be stated. So it's not a girl boss movie. So if you hear anyone say that, don't take them seriously. I'm just going to be honest. Because there's too much proof to the alternative position for there to be really any valid argument against it. Again, the fact that the Ballerina is told, hey, there are things that you can't do. Basically because you're a woman. There's things that are different between you and a male counterpart, and in order to fight them and to win, you will actually have to cheat, and you will actually have to do these other things. And then the fact that she gets toyed around with by John Wick. John Wick's just like, just slap around. So don't buy into that lie. It's not a girl boss movie. And even though that is the case, the movie's also still it's fine. It's okay. It's a decent movie. It features some really awesome action sequences in it, but the story, I do think, leaves a lot to be desired. I think it relies a little bit too much on the pre-established tropes from the John Wick movies, and honestly, it just feels like there is so much left to be desired. It feels like there are so many other paths that they could have taken, so many other story elements that they could have added in that could have really fleshed out the story, could have made things even better. But, unfortunately, that is not the direction that they decided to go in. And so therefore that is where we are. So can I give it a recommendation? Again, very middling. Basically, if you think it is worth going to check out, that is a decision that only you will be able to make for yourselves. So thank you all very much for watching tonight. What we can say is that it likely will be a flop, though. Seems post-theatrically, it'll be okay because of some deals if the reporting over on Valiant Renegade is, of course, accurate. And it usually is, of course. And so shout out to him. And with all that being said, I'm going to go and get some kind of dessert. We got to have something in here, I guess. And if I can't find anything, then, oh, well. Mobland it is. Got to get back to Mobland. All right. You guys are all also random because this is my ADD. I have a Steam Deck now. So I decided to get one because I love retro gaming. I love gaming on N64, etc. But I wanted to get this one simply because it is like the only one that, or it's one of the better ones that can do something like the Wii U, which I never got to play when I was younger, and can also emulate GameCube, which has so many good games on it, and also some 3DS titles that I was never able to play either. And yeah, so I'm very, very excited for that. No ice cream yet. I don't have any ice cream. As I said, we had to empty our refrigerator. Our power went out. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. Our power went out Saturday to Sunday because of a storm. So we had to empty out our refrigerator and most of our freezer. And so did not pick up any ice cream for the store. But we got some stuff. Harvick saying, have you seen the recent Superman TV spot with Lois Lane mocking Guy Gardner's haircut? No, I have not. But it doesn't change it for me. I'm sorry. Like, you just can't make a guy look like Fester Adams. You just can't. You just can't do it, okay? All right. You guys are amazing, beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. I will see you all Wednesday morning. That's right. We've got our summer stream schedule going. So Wednesday mornings from 10 a.m. Eastern to 11 a.m. Eastern, we have our show. And, oh, boy. So, wait a minute. Okay, should still be good. I have a doctor's appointment at 8:30 that morning. So should not be a long procedure. So I should be out by that time. And we'll see. Donuts. We had donuts yesterday, actually, for Pentecost. We had donuts. We also built a fire and had s'mores. Oh, beautiful. It was a beautiful night. We roasted some hot dogs over the open flames of the fire pit, and then we roasted some mallows, and I taught my son how to make a s'more. Did a couple of quotes. He's not ready for the full treatment from Sandlot, but a couple of quotes from the Sandlot of how you make a s'more, and it was fantastic. Anyway, I've gone on too long now. You guys are all amazing, beautiful people. Have a blessed Pentecost Monday. That's right, Father. Pentecost Monday. rocking that red. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illich and Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. Also to my Subscribestar people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. Also a huge shout out to my newest YouTube member, Raichu. And lastly to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started. And also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing, and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.